Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm going to share my whole seed organizing process with you. So I like to do this typically anytime within like December or January to get a feel of what seeds I have, which we already kind of went over last week with the seed haul. But today I need to get all of my seeds organized and kind of clustered together on when I'm going to be starting them out. I've done this throughout the years and I've really kind of figured out a process at this point. And I think this would just be really helpful for anyone that's either new to getting into seed starting or new to gardening for that matter, or just wants to really hone in on when things should be started and planted and kind of get a groove of what the gardening year might look like. This does go into kind of garden planning, but I take this more into seed organizing because this allows me to kind of see when things will be started and planted in the garden and really use that for my garden planning and kind of tweak things even further. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of give you guys some dates. There might be a few things that will shuffle, but I think I have my dates kind of down at this point. So if you are new here, I live in Kansas. I used to be zone 6 and now we're zone 7 here. And that doesn't really play a huge role when it comes to the veggie garden. My frost dates are pretty similar. Over the years, we have had a few that have been a little finicky. So our average last frost around here is around April 18th. The last few years, it's been a little bit early, and there's also been a year though that we've had a frost like late April. So I typically like to really watch the weather when it comes to that second week of April and plan out all of my seed starting for the very last week of April into May, because even though a lot of your seeds will say 4 to 6 weeks from your average last frost, that's your average last frost. A lot of these frost tender annuals you will be growing, like tomatoes and peppers, they really don't like to experience lows colder than the 50s. So I really like to just push my planting date about a week to 2 weeks back from when my average last frost is, depending on how the weather is in March and April. That really is a good indicator to me on how things may play out. Over the now, this will be year 7 of years gardening, I've had a cluster of kind of everything. I've had some cool wet springs and I've had some warm dry ones that might have like a random cooler day, but nothing that is like out of the norm. The last few years we've leaned on the warmer side, so I'm kind of just gauging off of what I've done in the past year, and then I'm also just tweaking that a little bit. There's a few things from last year's seed starting that I'm going to be doing slightly different, not too much different. So some of this might be kind of a repeat from last year, but I'm going to walk you guys through the whole process of organizing my seeds, so hopefully this can help you out when you organize yours. Before we jump into all the seed organizing though, I did want to share with you guys how the onions are looking. So we planted these 7 days ago on the dot. Typically onions take anywhere from about 4 to 12 days to really germinate. I'm really starting to get some more starting to pop up. There was a few little early guys, but it's looking like we're doing pretty well. I did get a few questions on if I was using heat mats with the onions. I did not show that in last video, and I am using the heat mats with the onions. Once everything is done kind of germinating, I will completely eliminate those heat mats though. I'm not going to let them sit on the heat mats any longer than the germinating process. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump in. I just wanted to share the onions with you guys. So other than onions, the only other thing in the garden at the moment that we have started for the 2024 year is our garlic. We planted that out, I think it was like the 20 something of October, and that will be roughly harvested about the 1st to 3rd week of June is kind of what I've ranged over the years. And onions we started last week, and those will be harvested about the 1st to 2nd week of July. I have roughly 5 different steps when it comes to the seed organizing process for me. And I kind of like to get all of my seeds on hand, roughly, at least majority of them, before I really start doing any seed starting, because you might be surprised. There could be that one seed that you didn't think would be started 10 to 12 weeks before your like average frost date or plant out date. And there is. I was actually shocked on a few things I'm going to be starting here roughly at the end of January and February. So I actually like to have the seed packets on hand. If I don't have them on hand, I will either print off a picture of what I want to grow and kind of write out the information that is listed on the website when it comes to what they suggest or recommend starting the seeds inside or starting the seeds outside. But step one is kind of figure out what you want to grow. So this is everything that I will be growing this year. Last week I did a seed haul with you guys, which is all in here. There's also a bunch of other things like sunflowers and zinnias and again, a bunch of other things that I will be planting. So I went ahead and got all of this out, and yeah, just get everything you want to grow kind of lined up, written down. And that is step one. Step two is figuring out your frost dates, and kind of backtracking to what I was mentioning at the beginning was I don't necessarily go off my frost dates, but I do look up my averages. So you can just do a quick Google search of when is my last average frost, and then type in the city and state you live in, and typically it will pop up, or you can just go on like Farmer's Almanac and stuff like that. For me, my average is roughly April 18th, but I don't really plant out until 2 weeks after, or like 1 week after, depending on how that weather is those few weeks leading up, and kind of watching that 10 to 15 day forecast. But I always plan off of my 2 weeks after my last average frost date, which for me is the last week of April, beginning of May. Again, because you don't want to have your stuff planted out and then you have that fluke cold. Your average is your average for a reason. It's going to take the extremes and bunch those together. So I kind of like to gauge on the safer side, especially when it comes to everything I'm seed starting, because you don't want to do the mistake like me. I think it was either my second or my third year, I planned everything off of my frost date. I also started everything early, and then I also planted everything out on my frost date, and then we got cold and everything kind of bounced back, but there was a few things not looking hot for a while. You really just don't want to stress out your plans if you don't have to. Step three for me is typically make a spreadsheet. I'm typically not a spreadsheet girl, but when it comes to this has really helped me, and this was something I did very early on when I started to dive a lot more into just this is a lot of different stuff, and this can get really, really difficult, and every seed packet is different when it comes to where the information is at. So if you can just build your own type of spreadsheet, this really has helped me in the past. So I'm actually going to jump you guys over to the screen so I can show you in more detail of what this kind of looks like for me, and kind of show you the categories and how I organize it all. Okay, so on the first column here, we have just everything that we are growing. So you can see we have garlic already on there, onions, and we just go through the list of everything we are growing. And under that same column of growing, you can see I have like onions and green beans and peppers all bold. And underneath it, I have what the length is that I will be wanting to kind of guide off of my plant date. So my plant date again is that last week of April, beginning of May. So I'm going to find out what is 10 to 12 weeks roughly before this date, which ends up being February 9th and 14th. So I know that roughly I need to be starting my pepper seeds the first and second week of February. This is actually one of those things I am pushing back just slightly. The last 2 years I have started them the very first week of February, and they started to flower inside, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do just want to kind of push that back a week just from what I've experienced in the past. But then you can also see things like green beans. I don't have a seed start date, and underneath it I have it says direct sow, and when it says direct sow, I can look out, is it after my last frost or is it before my last frost, and make a note of that as well. So I have two different colors of like blockouts I've been doing for direct sowing. So anything this light color gray that's blocked out. Anything blocked out is things I don't have to worry about when it comes to seed starting inside. So I have the gray boxes for everything that is direct sown after my last average or during my frost, or like my plant out date, which again is that last week of April, beginning of May. And then we also have this darker gray color, which is indicating anything that is direct sown out in the garden before my last average frost, which these all kind of vary. You can see here carrots direct sow before my last average frost about 2 to 3 weeks. This is about the same when it comes to regular potatoes, not necessarily sweet potatoes, but potatoes and carrots and those root crops can kind of handle that little bit of cold at the end of the season. And then you can see I have direct sow all right here, and these are going to be planted out roughly mid to like the 3rd week of March, roughly 4 to 6 weeks before my plant out date for everything else, or 4 to 6 weeks roughly from my last average frost. So again, you can see the dark gray is for everything that is in that before my last average frost. Pretty much everything that's light gray is anything that I'm direct sowing once we get warm. So that is kind of that. But up top here, we have like my seed start range, plant spacing. I also like to have this as something to look at when I'm doing all of my garden planning and really trying to draw all that out, kind of see if I can add more or squeeze less and whatnot in different areas. With having a backyard garden, or my space is even just under 2,000 square feet, and also having chickens devoted to some of that space, to max out my space, I really got to do some of this planning if I want to try to have as big of yields as I can. So having the plant spacing column for me has really helped me. And then I also have my plant out date. So you can see here with the garlic, my plant out date was October 27th of 2023. And my onion plant out date will be the 1st week of March. That's what I did last year. I'm going to keep like good eyes on that, because last year I did have one dip, but I did cover the onions and they were fine. But I do plant out my onions. I'm shooting for 6 weeks before my last average frost. I also have a column that I haven't filled out yet, which is harvest / full maturity. I like to also fill this out. So for example, with garlic, how I told you guys, I will be roughly harvesting it the 1st week to 3rd week. This is really good to know. That way, when I am again garden planning, I know that those beds are going to be opening up, and I will be able to plant out something else there. This is more of like seed organization, but this will also help you out tremendous when you're just filling out all of this information when it comes to garden planning and getting everything succession sown. So I know this can be a lot of information at once, and this can feel like a lot of work when it comes to seed organization, but when you do all of this now, it makes your work that much less in the spring, summer, because all the guesswork is taken out and you can just look at all of your charts. So if we're going back down the growing column, I'll show you guys, like for here we have peppers, 10 to 12 weeks roughly. The start date again is February 9th through 14th. With tomatoes, I won't be starting them until 5 to 6 weeks before that plant date. So I will not be starting tomatoes until March 15th. There was, I think 2 years ago, if you go back 2 years ago to what? That would have been 2022 seed starting season. There was like a time where I was like, note to self, never start tomatoes before mid-March ever again. And last year I timed them out a lot better. So I really like the mid-March planting time, and that is 5 to 6 weeks before. And then again, we got some direct sow, we got some direct sow, other direct sows. And then we have a bunch of different cool weather crops, which I'm not going to be planting too many cool weather crops, but I'm going to probably be filling them in here and there. And then I have different teas. And then you can see here, our last kind of grouping for our seed start dates is March 22nd to March 29th. And this is a lot of the flowers that will be going into the garden and different stuff like that. So also herbs. So now we just go to the bottom, and this is where I kind of group all of my seeds together to know exactly when I'm going to be starting them when. And this year I have a few extra categories than years in the past. I would kind of group a few things together, but there's, as you can see, there's a few weeks where I'm starting like maybe 2 things, and some of those things might be direct sown, or one of those things is starting cabbage 1 week. It needs a little bit longer than like the broccoli and the lettuce and stuff like that to like germinate and grow, at least from my experience. You can see there's a few things I'm starting, and then there's bigger groups of clusters on when I'm starting things. So these are going to be all the categories for grouping today. So When it comes to seed organization, I really like to use these photo organized planners. I got mine at Michael's. These go on sale for $14.99 quite often, which I did look before making this video, and it is currently on sale. You can also find the exact same ones on Amazon for roughly $20, depending on like how much you really want to spend on it. I've had this one now, I think for about 3-4 years, and it's still in great shape and it's used a lot. Inside it has a bunch of these 4x6 containers, which I have found fits a seed packet just really nicely. So this is going to hold each one of our categories. So I'm going to label like direct sow after frost, direct sow early spring, direct sow 1 to 3 weeks before my last frost. And I might make a few like little notes on there just as like what my like dates are. And then we're gonna have January 28th, we're gonna have February 3rd, and kind of do all of those, and we are going to just label everything. So I like having these, they fit really, really nicely. And when I'm kind of grouping everything out on what I want to grow for the year, I'll kind of just clean them out. So with these, I really like to grab painter's tape. This is really nice to where you can write the dates on here. You can also put a few strips on the front to write out any notes to yourself or any extra dates, but then you can see while it's laying in the container exactly, oh, well, if it's January 25th, I need to start all these today, and so forth. It just makes life a lot easier. So I like to use these, and I'm just going to use some painter's tape and write out all of my little sections. This is kind of the last step. Step 4 was grouping everything together on what I was just mentioning here on the spreadsheet. So kind of step 3 and 4 are kind of all one, but they're intertwined. And now we're just going to do the physical work of actually organizing our seeds. What I like to personally do when I am making this chart is just go through and actually just type everything out real quickly when it comes to what variety I want to grow, and then roughly what they suggest for like starting. And then over like the course of a week, I'll double check a few things, I'll research a few things, and I'll kind of see necessarily what dates I want to do. I don't really stress on that process, but it can feel a little lengthy. So all I did was put some painter's tape right there on the very top, where if you're looking down on it, you can see, and then I put 2 other pieces of tape so I can write any notes to myself or anything extra outside of kind of the planting dates. Okay, so I'm going to label this one direct. So probably should have wrote that a little smaller. I'm going to retape that one because I should have wrote that a lot smaller. You will see I also use a lot of painter's tape when it comes to labeling like seed containers and stuff. It just works really well when you can just rip it off and you're not like having gunk. I'm just gonna put direct because I will know it's gonna be direct, and I'll just put direct after. Okay. All right, so now we have January 28th, February 3rd. So let me go ahead and get all of these kind of in order here. And I'm going to kind of lay them out where this is facing towards me so I can see it pretty easily. Which I have a few of, I need to vacuum this floor anyway, so. There is a chance I might not use this one. This one's just for cabbage, and there's still a chance I might not plant the cabbage, mostly because I don't think I'm going to have the room, but I'm going to try to get some my hands on some planters, maybe try to plant them out in some planters. Okay. All right, so we got all those there, and then March 2nd, March 15th, March 22nd. And now we're just going to go through all of our stuff and put them in the according box. So I have melon honeydew, that will be direct so after. We have our elegance lavender. So let's see when lavender is. February 24th. There we go. Sunflower, 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 which I also don't have some of my other zinnias and sunflowers at the moment down here. I also have my cantaloupe upstairs too, which I also need to grab. They're like in little pill containers since I saved them. I'm so excited about this. Breadseed poppies, which this is a direct sow in the early Cosmos, March 22nd. Tomatoes, tomatoes. You may have seen on my chart, I threw San Morzanos on there just like for information wise. I don't know if I'm growing San Morzanos quite yet. I'm rolling them out for the year, but if I can squeeze them in, I'm still like doing the last little bit of like full on garden planning. So it's one of those that, yeah, I'm still teetering on. All right, so all of our peppers are February 9th. Another pepper, another pepper, another pepper, another pepper. All right, so we got some Blue Lake pole beans. That's a direct sow. All right, we are completely organized. Wait, what are you? Straw flower. Okay, I thought I had straw flower. Straw flower is the same. Most flowers, you really only need 4 weeks if they're an annual. They grow pretty quickly. Here is all of our categories. Here is all of our seeds organized. Now I'm just going to clip each one of these shut, and I'll probably still be like going through these as I'm garden planning a little bit more, writing out a few different notes on when things might be harvested out and such, or when I might need to do second plantings of certain things. But this is kind of the gist of how everything will currently be organized for the start of the seed starting year. Typically, once I get through midsummer, I like to reorganize everything back out into individual variety. That way I can kind of see what I currently have on hand, what I might need to reorder for like the second half of the season going into like the fall gardening season. And that way, again, I can also just grab and go. So once I get everything reorganized into the variety, once all this is done, that way, if I'm like, oh, I have room for some lettuce today, I can just go run, grab the one that has lettuce in it. So I'm gonna put all of my direct sows on one side. So January 28th, February 9th, oh, no, February 3rd, February 9th, February 24th, and then we have March 2nd, March 15th, and March 22nd. I have a handful of other containers here with just like dill. I might not plant dill because I won't really need dill this year. I'm not growing cucumbers this year. I officially decided on not growing cucumbers this year. So I really don't need to grow dill. I have plenty of seed, so it's not like I need to grow it for seed either. So there's just a few other decisions I need to make, but yeah, let me give you a closer look. So yeah, we have direct sow all through here. And then here are all of our dates. Again, I'll be roughly planting out that last week of April, first week of May. Okay, I think that's going to conclude all of our seed organization for the day. I hope seeing this process of what I do will help you out with all things seed starting wherever you are at. I hope you can take some things from my process, and hopefully you learned a few things along the way. So either way, that's going to conclude today's video. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye.